Today on LawNext, I'm going to hand over my podcast to NotebookLM to discuss the state of law practice management technology. If you haven't heard of NotebookLM, it is an AI tool from Google that turns your documents and uploaded materials into an engaging audio discussion that sounds a whole lot like, well, a podcast, with the two hosts chatting it up about the materials you uploaded. Quote Google's own description, quote, with one click, two AI hosts start up a lively, deep dive discussion based on your sources. They summarize your material, make connections between topics, and banter back and forth. So I decided to give it a try. Back in September, I wrote a 4-part series on my blog that I called The Shrinking Ownership of Law Practice Management Technology. It was a deep dive of my own into how ownership of law practice management software for solo and small firms has been consolidated under just 6 ownership groups. So I loaded the 4 parts of that series into NotebookLM and asked it to generate its audio overview. What you'll hear today is the discussion it generated. It's important to keep in mind that this is not simply a summary. The two speakers do summarize key points, but they also add interpretations and perspectives that are nowhere to be found in the original source material. So what we'll be doing for today's episode is to play that audio. It's just about 15 minutes long. And when it's done, I'll come back to share my thoughts on what it produced. But before we get to any of that, please take a moment to hear from the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. Tracking time doesn't have to be a manual chore. With Bill for Time, you can effortlessly streamline your firm with multiple timers, customizable invoice templates, and online payment processing that gets you paid up to 70% faster. Plus, you'll have all the support you need to get started with Bill for Time's free data migration and live training. Reclaim your time, streamline your practice, and watch your productivity soar. Discover the Bill for Time difference at Bill for Time. That's Bill, the number 4, time.com. All right, well, now let's roll the tape on the NotebookLM generated podcast, and then stay tuned for my comments after it's over.
Welcome to your deep dive.
Yeah.
We got a ton of requests to unpack this whole law practice management tech consolidation thing.
Yeah, mergers, acquisitions. It seems like every week there's a new headline.
Exactly. So we're going to break down for you what's really going on, why it matters for, your actual practice day to day.
It really is a fascinating shift. We're seeing, it used to be a really diverse market, tons of independent players.
Right.
And now we're seeing this, trend towards 6 major groups really kind of calling the shots.
Yeah, it's like the legal tech world is suddenly being run by a small group of, I don't know, what's a good analogy?
Almost like it's like the blockbuster movie franchise taking over the box office,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. But before we get too deep into the giants and the power dynamics, let's take a step back.
Okay.
I think it's helpful to kind of remember where we came from with all of this, right? Like imagine you're a lawyer in 2007.
Okay.
You're wrestling with this clunky software, everything's stored on your own server.
Oh, yeah. I remember those days.
And then, boom, 2008 Clio launches the first cloud-based practice management platform.
Right. Talk about a game changer.
Right. And it was like suddenly the playing field was leveled.
Yeah, absolutely. Cloud technology was a watershed moment. Suddenly solo practitioners, small firms, they had access to these sophisticated tools that were easy to use, affordable. It was amazing.
Totally. And that was really just the beginning, right?
Yeah, just the tip of the iceberg.
So to help us really make sense of, all this consolidation, we've got a stack of articles here from Bob Ambrogi of LawSites.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
He's the guru, the legal tech guru.
Mm.
And he breaks it down into these 6 main ownership groups.
Okay.
Affini Pay Caret, Christian Beck Australian Technology Innovators.
That's a mouthful.
Right. Clio Paradigm and Profit Solve. It's a lot to keep track of.
It really is, and it's fascinating to see how these groups are, not just competing on features anymore, but they're also battling for control.
Oh, interesting.
Over your entire legal workflow, right? So if you choose one platform, you could be locked into their ecosystem.
Right. So it's not just about does this software do what I need it to do? It's what are the implications of even choosing this in the first place?
Exactly what happens if you want to switch? What happens to your data? These are questions you need to be asking.
And one of the things that Ambrogi points out that I thought was really interesting is how these companies are not just tech companies anymore.
Right.
They're major investment opportunities. And so they have these strategies to control huge chunks of the legal tech market.
Like they're playing a long game, right?
Yeah.
They're not just thinking about today, they're thinking about 5 years, 10 years down the road.
Totally. And, speaking of long games and strategies, let's look at AffiniPay for a second.
Okay.
They own LawPay, right?
Right.
Which was like the Switzerland of legal payment processing.
Right. Everybody used them, partnered with everybody.
It worked with everyone, right?
Yeah.
And then bam, they acquire MyCase, which is a major practice management platform.
So suddenly Switzerland picked a side.
Right. And that sent shockwaves through the industry.
I remember when that happened.
Because it was like, oh, wow, things are getting serious now.
Yeah, it was a real signal that, these companies are making big moves and they're not afraid to shake things up.
And it's not just AffiniPay.
Right.
Think about companies like Smokeball Practice Panther.
Mm-hmm.
They've all been scooped up by these larger groups. It's mind-boggling how quickly this is all happening.
It is, and it begs the question, is this good or bad for lawyers? They're both potential benefits and drawbacks.
Yeah, let's unpack that.
Okay, so on the one hand, bigger companies often have more resources, right? So more development, which could lead to better features, stronger support, even more innovation.
That makes sense, but it also makes me wonder about conflict of interest. Like, what if I'm using MyCase, but I want to use a different payment processor?
Right.
Am I going to be nudged towards using LawPay?
That's a valid concern, and it really highlights the need for lawyers to understand who owns their software.
Yeah.
What are their long-term strategies?
Right, because on the one hand, yeah, maybe we get more robust platforms, smoother integrations, but on the other hand, less competition could mean higher prices.
Exactly.
Fewer choices. And then there's the question of whether these larger companies are really going to be responsive to the needs of individual lawyers.
And Ambrogi brings up a really important point about the ethical implications, too. Lawyers have a professional responsibility to understand where their data is going, who has access to it, how it's being protected.
So it's not just about convenience anymore.
No, it's about making informed decisions that align with your ethical obligations.
To your clients.
To your clients, your responsibility to protect that data.
Okay, so let's dive into these ownership groups a little deeper, starting with AffiniPay and their, kind of strategic moves.
Sounds good. Let's untangle this web. Okay, so AffiniPay, they really started with LawPay, right? The dominant payment processor for law firms.
Yeah, it was like the default option for so many firms.
Yeah, they were like the neutral Switzerland of legal tech, working with everyone.
Right.
But then, by acquiring MyCase, a major practice management platform, they basically entered the arena as a direct competitor to all these other platforms.
So it's like they went from being Switzerland to being like, a major player in the game.
Right, exactly. And it raises all sorts of questions about, competition choice.
Right.
But it's also important to remember that MyCase itself had been on a bit of an acquisition spree.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they had acquired companies like CasePeer for personal injury firms, Woodpecker for document automation, DocketWise for immigration.
Wow. So they were already kind of building this like little empire.
Exactly. So they were already becoming a pretty powerful ecosystem even before AffiniPay came along.
So what does this mean for the average lawyer who's like, okay, I need to choose a practice management system?
Well, it means you need to be aware of the potential implications of choosing a platform that's owned by a larger group.
Okay.
Right? Are you comfortable with your payment processing and your practice management being controlled by the same entity? Does it limit your options for integrating with other software providers?
That's a really good point because, we talk about integrations all the time on this show.
Yeah.
And it's like if you're locked into this one ecosystem, you might not be able to use the tools that you really want to use.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's AffiniPay. Let's move on to Carrot.
Okay.
They seem to be kind of straddling both the old and the new in the legal tech world.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix. They're built on the foundation of LawNext,
Okay.
which has been around since 1983.
Wow, that's ancient history in the tech world.
I know, right? But they've also acquired Zola Suite, which is a newer cloud-based platform.
Right. So it's like they're trying to appeal to both like the old guard
Yeah,
and then the kids on the block.
exactly. They want to appeal to those established firms that might be a little hesitant to move to the cloud.
Right. They're still using their, floppy disks.
Exactly. And then they also want to attract the newer firms that are looking for the latest and greatest technology.
It's an interesting strategy trying to bridge that gap. I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Me too.
Okay, now for the group with the most challenging name to pronounce, Christian Beck Australian Technology Innovator.
I know, right? It's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful. But this group includes companies like LAP and Smokeball,
Yeah,
both major players in the practice management world.
huge players.
They've also acquired One Legal Filing for court filing law toolbox, for calendaring LawLytics, for website management.
Wow, so they're really building out that suite of services.
They want to be the one-stop shop
Everything you need.
for all your legal tech needs.
But again, it raises those questions about choice and control.
Right.
Are you comfortable with one company having access to that much of your firm's data?
It's a big question.
It is a big question. And do you want to be locked into their ecosystem, or do you prefer the flexibility of choosing different providers?
These are the trade-offs lawyers need to start thinking about.
Yeah, because this consolidation is not going to slow down.
Okay, so let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, Clio.
Okay.
They're the leader in the cloud-based practice management market.
They've been incredibly successful.
Yeah.
Building a really user-friendly platform, attracting a huge customer base.
And they're investing a lot in AI too, right?
Yeah.
With their upcoming Clio Duo launch.
Yeah, they're really betting big on the future of AI in law.
It's exciting and a little bit scary at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, AI has the potential to revolutionize the way we work, but it also raises some big questions.
Right. We'll get to those in a minute.
Okay.
Let's move on to Paradigm, the company behind Practice Panther.
Okay, so Paradigm, they also own Bill for Time and Billing Roostcase for case management, Headnote for payments.
So they're also trying to be that comprehensive platform.
Yeah, they're definitely aiming to be a one-stop shop for law firms.
I wonder how they're going to compete with Clio.
It's a tough battle, but Paradigm has a strong track record, a loyal customer base. The key for them is going to be whether they can keep innovating, providing the features and integrations that lawyers need.
Okay, last but not least, we have ProfitSolve.
Okay.
They're a bit of a dark horse in this race.
Yeah, they've been quietly building up a portfolio of practice management companies, TimeSolve for time and Billing Rocket Matter for practice management,
Okay.
and Tabs 3, which is a desktop-based system.
Interested.
And they also own Cosmolex, which is another cloud-based platform.
So they've got a mix of cloud and on-premise solutions. It's like they're hedging their bets.
Yeah, they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Trying to appeal to a wider range of firms.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got these 6 major players, each with their own strategies, their strengths. It's a complex landscape.
And it's changing rapidly.
Yeah. What does this mean for lawyers who are trying to choose the right technology?
Well, it means doing your research.
Yeah.
Carefully considering your needs, your priorities.
Don't just jump on the bandwagon.
Exactly. Don't just go with the biggest or the most popular platform.
Think about your firm.
Yeah, think about your firm's size, practice areas, budget your long-term goals.
And choose a platform that aligns with your values.
Gives you the control and the flexibility that you need to run your practice.
Right, effectively, ethically.
Exactly.
But this consolidation trend, it's just one piece of the puzzle, right? We're also seeing the rise of artificial intelligence.
Right.
The increasing importance of cybersecurity.
Absolutely. Those trends are shaping the future of legal tech.
And they're going to have a huge impact on the way lawyers work.
So now that we've kind of mapped out the major players in this consolidation game,
Yeah.
let's shift our focus to these emerging trends and really dive into how they might impact your practice.
All right, so we've met the players in this whole legal tech consolidation saga.
Right. It's a lot to keep track of.
But now I think the big question is what's next? What should lawyers be paying attention to as we kind of move into the future here?
Well, one of the most significant trends is the rise of artificial intelligence.
AI. It's everywhere these days.
It is, and we're already seeing it being integrated into legal software, document review, legal research client intake.
Yeah, I've even seen some tools that are like helping with drafting like basic documents and stuff.
Right, exactly. And imagine, down the road, AI negotiating settlements, drafting complex contracts, even predicting case outcomes.
Whoa, that's a lot.
It is. It's a huge shift, and it really could change the skills that lawyers need to succeed.
So it's not just about knowing the law anymore, it's about knowing how to use the technology.
Right, exactly. And it raises some ethical questions too, like how do we ensure the accuracy of AI in legal matters?
Yeah, the big one.
What about maintaining client confidentiality when we're using these AI tools?
Right, because the AI is only as good as the data that it's trained on.
Exactly. So there's a lot to think about there, but definitely AI is a huge trend to watch.
Okay, so AI on the rise.
Yep.
We've also got, this whole consolidation thing happening. What about cybersecurity?
Oh yeah, that's a huge concern. With all this data being stored in the cloud somewhere, law firms are becoming prime targets for hackers.
Yeah, because it's not just about protecting client data, right? It's about protecting your firm's sensitive information.
Everything financial records intellectual property.
Right.
It's all vulnerable.
So what can lawyers do to protect themselves?
Well, investing in robust cybersecurity measures is essential.
Okay.
Strong passwords,
Yeah.
multi-factor authentication, data encryption, things like that.
So it's not just about the technology, it's about training your staff too.
Absolutely. You need to make sure everyone understands the best practices for handling sensitive data, recognizing potential threats.
Cybersecurity is no joke.
No, it's not optional anymore. It's a must-have.
All right, so we've got AI on the rise, we've got cyber threats looming. Is there anything else on the horizon for legal tech that we should be thinking about?
Well, another trend is the move towards specialization.
Okay.
We're seeing more and more companies focusing on specific practice areas.
So instead of trying to be everything to everyone, they're becoming experts in a particular niche.
Exactly, like personal injury, immigration, law, estate planning.
So instead of one platform trying to do it all, lawyers might end up using a suite of specialized tools.
Right, that integrate with each other.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so the specialization allows companies to develop software that's tailored to the unique needs of those practice areas.
Which means lawyers get access to more powerful and efficient tools.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We've got consolidation happening, AI on the rise, cybersecurity concerns, and a trend towards specialization.
That's right.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. It's a rapidly changing landscape.
So for our listeners out there, what should they be doing to prepare for the future of legal tech?
Stay informed. Read industry publications, attend conferences, follow thought leaders on social media.
Yeah, stay up to date.
Embrace change. Don't be afraid to experiment with new technologies. Adapt your practice.
Don't get left behind.
And prioritize cybersecurity. Make sure you have strong security measures in place and your staff is trained to protect sensitive data.
Okay, those are some really solid tips.
I hope so.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
The legal tech world is clearly undergoing a major transformation, and staying ahead of the curve is essential for any lawyer who wants to thrive.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Right, and we've given you the knowledge, now it's up to you to use it.
Exactly. So what stands out to you from all this? What questions does this raise for your own practice?
That's something to think about, and here's one more thing to ponder as you move forward. As AI becomes more and more integrated into legal practice, what role will human lawyers play?
That's a good one.
It's something to think about, right?
Yeah.
Food for thought until our next deep dive.
So there you have it, the NotebookLM AI-generated discussion of my articles on law practice software consolidation. In a moment, I'll share a few of my thoughts on what you just heard. But first, please take a moment to learn about the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. Capture lost revenue by accurately tracking your time, anytime, anyplace. Bill for Time's legal time tracking and billing software helps turn your firm's administrative work into a streamlined process. With intuitive time tracking, professional invoice customization, and user-friendly online payment processing, you'll minimize non-billable hours and maximize your firm's potential. See how Bill for Time can streamline your workflows at billfortime.com. That's Bill, the number 4, time.com. All right, so you've just heard an AI-generated discussion via Google's NotebookLM tool about a series of articles I wrote about consolidation of ownership of law practice management software. I'm sure you have thoughts. Here are a few of mine. First, well, how can you not love any AI that calls me the legal tech guru? It was right there at the start when the male speaker, let's call him Jack, references my name, and the female, we'll call her Jill, says, "Oh yeah, he's great." To which Jack then replies, "He's the guru, the legal tech guru." So clearly no hallucination problems with this AI, right? But seriously, folks, I'm impressed with how natural is the back and forth banter. Even if it can be a little too chatty, it really sounds like two people, granted two hyped up Silicon Valley people maybe, but two people nevertheless, having a real live made for podcasting conversation. There are parts they stumble over, like Christian Beck Australian Technology Innovators. If you'd read my series, you would know that Beck is an Australian entrepreneur who owns Australian Legal Technology Innovators, which in turn owns Leap and other legal software products. In my article, for reasons I explained there, I combined Beck, the person, and Australian Technology Innovators, the company, into a single discussion. But NotebookLM seemed to think this was the complete name of the company, which it kept referring to with the run-on name Christian Beck Australian Technology Innovators, with Jack, what we're calling the male speaker, calling it the company, quote, with the most challenging name to pronounce, and Jill replying, I know, right? It's a mouthful. Unfortunately, it wasn't right. That said, I was overall impressed with how well the speakers synthesized the key points in my article and some of the key points regarding the specific ownership groups. They talked, for example, about LawPay's acquisition of MyCase after MyCase had itself made several acquisitions and the impact of all that on the legal tech market. They talked about Clio as the 800-pound gorilla in the room and how it is investing a lot in AI. As they said, betting big on the future of AI in law. They talked about Paradigm, which is, by the way, a sponsor of this podcast. We appreciate it. Thank you. And how it needs to compete with Clio, noting that they have a strong track record and loyal customer base, but suggesting they need to keep innovating and providing the features that lawyers need. And I thought it was interesting that they referred to another of these roll-up groups, ProfitSolve, as, quote, a bit of a dark horse in this race. Noting that the company had a mix of on-premise and cloud products, they say, it's like they're hedging their bets and, quote, not putting all their eggs in one basket. Where I think the overall recording got most interesting is about two-thirds of the way in, about 10 minutes into the 15-minute recording, where the two hosts start to step back and discuss what all this consolidation means for lawyers. They start with somewhat perceptive insight that all this consolidation means that lawyers need to do their research carefully, considering their needs and priorities, and they shouldn't necessarily just go with the biggest and most popular platform. I couldn't agree more. But then, interestingly, they bring in an important topic. And note, this is a topic that I never discussed at all in any of my four-part series. That topic is the importance of cybersecurity. They chat about how two key trends, AI and cybersecurity, are going to shape the future of how lawyers work. And let me reiterate, none of this was in my article. The AI that generated this audio is taking my article as a foundation and running with it, taking it into a direction of its own choosing, I think it's fair to say. And then, after talking about how AI and cybersecurity will reshape law practice, they bring up the ethical angle, asking how we ensure the accuracy of AI in legal matters and ensure client confidentiality. Then, getting near the end, they take this into another direction again, where Jack says, quote, all right, so we've got AI on the rise, we've got cyber threats looming. Is there anything else on the horizon for legal tech that we should be thinking about? And Jill answers, well, another trend is the move towards specialization. What they're referring to here is the development of software oriented towards specialized areas of law practice, such as personal injury and immigration. In my article, I talk about this, about how Clio, for example, has developed a plug-in for personal injury practice, or how the Paradigm and AffiniPay people have acquired software focused on immigration practice. So all that was part of my article in a sense, but it's impressive how they veer off into bigger picture topics that were not in my article and then come back to weave in this and other points that were in my article. And then comes what I kind of consider a 1-2 series of knockout punches in terms of their analysis of my article, where Jack asked Jill what lawyers should be doing to prepare for the future of legal tech. Quote, stay informed, Jill says. Read industry publications, attend conferences, follow thought leaders on social media. All of that is very good advice. And then Jill goes on, quote, embrace change. Don't be afraid to experiment with new technologies. Adapt your practice. Don't get left behind. And prioritize cybersecurity. I couldn't have said this better myself. Then comes maybe the key wrap-up line delivered by Jack, where he says, quote, the legal tech world is clearly undergoing a major transformation. And staying ahead of the curve is essential for any lawyer who wants to thrive. To that, Jill replies, absolutely. Knowledge is powerful. Pretty good stuff there. And then to close it all out, Jack leaves us with this tantalizing tease, quote, and here's one more thing to ponder as you move forward. As AI becomes more and more integrated into legal practice, what role will human lawyers play? Jill answers, "That's a good one." To which Jack replies, "It's something to think about, right?" It sure is. In addition to the future of lawyers, I might also ask, what is the future of human podcasters, given the ability of NotebookLM to generate a podcast such as this based on its synthesis of the articles I wrote? So there you have it. It's really fascinating to me to see how this AI-generated conversation was able to take the foundation I provided of articles I wrote, but really build on them and take them in some directions that I did not cover or even anticipate in my articles. I'd love to hear what you think about all of this. Please share any thoughts or comments you have with me. I'll even consider playing them on a future episode of the show or putting them up on my blog. If you want to send that to me, you can do it by emailing me, ambrogi@gmail.com, or message me on LinkedIn or Blue Sky or X or wherever you are on social media. And if you like this podcast, don't forget to leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. LawNext is a production of LawNext Media. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. I hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of LawNext.